please put your hands together for Director of Music Tech Fest, Andrew Dubber. Please give him a hand.
Thanks very much. We have a wee logo, we do. So hi, I'm Andrew Dubber. As you've heard, I'm the Director of Music Tech Fest, hence the logo both behind me and in front of me. But as you've also heard, that's not actually what I'm here to talk to you about, though if you do want to see what that looks like, you can go and have your mind blown by cyborg performers, accessible music tech, blockchain AI, and neurofeedback control of musical performance by the MTF Labs crew on the James Brown stage at 9 p.m. tonight. That is a bunch of people and methodologies that I stand near and take credit for a living. Now, normally when I do this sort of thing, I tend to just stand here with no notes and just kind of talk. But as you may have picked up from your leather-bound Slush music program, I'm writing a book, and so I hope in that context you will forgive me reading to you. Now, the book is essentially about playlists, lists of songs, that sort of thing. It's not a finished book, and though I have spoken to literally, or at least figuratively, hundreds of people, I'm still conducting a lot of research and interviews. So the purpose of this talk is to try and reach out to a group of people who will want to have a conversation about this and potentially have something to contribute to the overall finished book. Now, one of the things that you discover when you start writing about mixtapes or playlists is that you inevitably end up talking about yourself. I don't want this to be a biography, and I don't necessarily think I'm particularly interesting when it comes to life stories, or at least there are no History Channel documentaries or Hallmark specials currently in production that I'm aware of, but there is already a fair bit in the book that's really quite deeply personal. And I guess part of that is because the book is structured like a cassette mixtape that I'm giving to you as a gift. So, a couple of very quick show of hands questions. Who here has made a mixtape for somebody? Okay, who here has received a mixtape from somebody? It's a really good feeling, isn't it? So this book, as a mixtape, has an A-side, all about the culture and meaning of mixtapes and playlists, and a B-side, all about the business of mixtapes and playlists. And what I've done, because why wouldn't you, is to connect each chapter to a song. So the chapter on nostalgia and memory, for instance, is the Ricky Lee Jones version of I Won't Grow Up. The chapter on music and context, road trip mixtapes, Americana, the Nordic tone, music and landscape, and so on, that's Bohemian Like You by the Dandy Warhols. The chapter on mixtapes and the law, home taping is killing music, street market bootleg mixtapes, that one is Heart Attack and Vine by Tom Waits. I've got chapters on music radio formats, specialist shows, live music set lists, music discovery, hip-hop mixtapes, the silence between the tracks, algorithms and AI, music and neuroscience, DJs reading and responding to a crowd, music and narrative. Each chapter is a song, and the songs, well, anyway, you get the idea. I've made you a mixtape, and so as an intro to the book, I'd like to read a bit of it for you. It's kind of the letter that goes along with this mixtape. Dear Your Name Here. It'll give you a sense of where I'm going with this. This is just an excerpt, of course, and I'm going to skip large chunks. I'm going to hold up my hand, incidentally, to indicate where I've skipped over a large section, just so you don't think my logic and continuity are faulty. Okay, let me read you a story. Hi, I've made you a mixtape. Whatever you want to make of it, or decide to read into it, I chose these songs for you. Don't be too daunted by the length of the accompanying written text. The music is the thing. You can always refer to my words here as and when the question why crosses your mind, and hopefully this will hold some useful clues. That said, this is not a puzzle to be solved. It's just some music I wanted to collate together, put in a particular order, and send to you. Pretty much as simple as that. Now, part of the joy in creating a mix like this is to go digging for just the right piece of music, to go in just the correct place. You might picture long evenings with a glass of wine or two, scattered piles of records on a wooden floor, handwritten lists, abandoned attempts, and the odd series of detours that had me either dancing around the living room or attended by concerned dogs as I became, let's say, emotionally engaged, consumed by memories, record sleeve in hand, cross-legged on the floor. There's a fair degree of poetic license in that description, of course, but do feel free to conjure that scene as some sort of filmic montage, or indeed just go and watch High Fidelity again. It's close enough to the truth to be illuminating. So this has been a labour of love as much as it's been a personal indulgence, and it's given me an opportunity to sit down and try and articulate exactly what it is that I love about these songs, and perhaps hint, as much to myself as to you, at why they have some particular meaning when presented as a gift from me to you in this form. But making this compilation also took me on a bit of a journey, and it's that aspect of this process that I wanted to offer as some sort of explanation as to the sheer length of what I'm writing here to you. Do forgive me if the accompanying notes and their own accompanying footnotes expand somewhat beyond the mix itself. This is not all just liner material. You see, the thing is, this process led me to thinking about mixtapes and collections of songs in general, and I inevitably began to explore some of those ideas. After all, this seemed like the ideal occasion to do so, and it gave me a chance to sit down and examine what it is exactly I think about choosing music, how to put it together, and where that comes from. Whether that's in the context of a cassette mix, a radio format, an album track list, a live set list, or an algorithmically formulated streaming playlist, I'm interested in what's going on when we play one song after another, how we read that, how it changes how we understand each of the individual works, like paintings collected together in some sort of exhibition rather than another sort. I'm interested in music that follows other music as a narrative, and I'd like to be able to describe the way that we understand these musical journeys in a fashion that says something a little more helpful than simply, well, this kind of works. It turns out, as you might expect, there's a fair bit to it, and far smarter people than me have given this serious consideration from within their various fields, from cultural theory to radical politics, the handcrafting and maker community to museums of broken relationships, professional radio broadcasters to experts in MIR, the hardcore computer science of music information retrieval and audio analysis that fuels algorithmic playlisting. However, there seems to be almost nothing that connects those different understandings in a way that shines a light on what makes one list of music better than another alternative list of music, even one containing precisely the same songs. But I've had, let's say, occasion to think about this stuff. Over the course of my life, I've been a record producer, a record label owner, radio broadcaster, popular music culture educator, a professor of music industry innovation, author of books about radio and music in the digital age, festival director, and above all else, and all the way along, a fairly committed music fan and record collector. I've spent a good deal of my 50 years on the planet thinking about how music connects to other music. Aspects of that one simple idea started to weave their way into pretty much everything I do and think about. I'm particularly fascinated by how sequences of music create stories and journeys, how we construct memories and identity from music, how making and sharing mixtapes became perhaps the most widespread folk art of the 20th century, how it connects place and context, how we give meaning to everything from birth to romance to aging and death through musical narratives, how the music industry relies on those cultural phenomena for its business, and how those things change over time and in each new media age. I'm interested in how some songs fit together and others just do not. I'm fascinated by how we choose which song can or should follow another. Putting music in an order, like so many other widespread, ritual-filled cultural activities like cooking food or having sex, is rich with surprising stories, deep subcultures, regional variances, arcane specialisms, grand theories, fascinating characters, unusual obsessions, and unexpected insights. The task I've set myself here is to try and draw those threads together and see where we end up. At any rate, from the standpoint of communication and culture, near synonyms in my worldview, the takeaway is that there is a key difference between the meanings we arrive at using the atomic unit of song and those we come to in the context of the complex molecular structure of the mixtape or playlist. That is to say, music moves us. Collections of music take us places. The way in which we move forward in that journey is through the selection and curation of not just a bunch of songs, but a deliberate sequence of next songs. What's interesting about that, at least to me, is the complex, fraught, and possibly erroneous idea that there can be a right next song. I've spent my life in search of it. I am forever looking for the right next song. And like anything as unquantifiable and ephemeral, it's entirely true to say that there is no such thing as the definitive right next song. But I can tell you with utmost certainty that there is a star in the sky and a pebble on a beach for every wrong one. Rightness is not a pole position, but a category with richness, breadth, and diversity. It's not the rightness you seek from a mathematical equation, but the rightness you seek from the selection of wine to go with your meal. And while taste guides us, knowing a little about the wine helps us to make sense of that connection and enhances the overall dining experience. Now, normally, of course, when making a mixtape like this one here before you, I'd do what you'd do. Just a sentence or paragraph to provide a bit of context on each of the songs. The white card beside a painting in a gallery by way of explanation. A little context, some information, biographical, historical, or psychological about the work or the artist. And maybe something about why I chose it, why it fits within this particular exhibition, and perhaps why it makes me think of you. In this case, as I've mentioned, I've given myself a little license to stretch out, as jazz soloists say, to riff on a few ideas that the very act of making a mixtape evoke and manifest. But word count aside, that's more or less still what this is. A collection of songs and thoughts collated and compiled, handcrafted into a singular work, and then, perhaps somewhat awkwardly, passed over as a gift. So here we are, and here you go. Hope you enjoy it. So it's a work in progress. That was the bit from the introduction. It's a work in progress, and there is loads to talk about. There's still lots of work to do, lots to write, and I would love to talk to you about your take on the topic. The purpose of this talk here is that everyone has a story, and some people even have expertise. Show of hands who has some opinion or experience on this topic. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so that's what I'm collecting. Come and find me, let's have a chat. I would say any questions, but I have more questions that you could possibly ever come up with. So what I'm after is any answers. Thank you very much.